Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra.
Hello and welcome to this Wednesday edition of Market Mantra, the program in which we give you a complete update on the economic, business and stock market news of the day. I am Anubha Rohatgi and with me is my co-anchor in Hindi, Vishal Sharma.
नमस्कार, मार्केट मंत्र में आप सभी का स्वागत। प्रतिदिन की तरह आज भी हम देश और दुनिया से आर्थिक, व्यापारिक और शेयर बाजार के ताजा समाचार आप तक लाएंगे और उन पर चर्चा भी करेंगे। चर्चा के लिए हमारे साथ आज स्टूडियो में मौजूद हैं वरिष्ठ आर्थिक विशेषज्ञ जयंता दास। जयंता दास, नमस्कार, कार्यक्रम में आपका स्वागत।
नमस्कार सर।
और सबसे पहले हेडलाइंस के साथ हैं अनुभा।
Thank you, Vishal. Domestic stocks recover more than 2%. Sensex closes above 54,600. Nifty settles near 16,350. Rupee appreciates 35 paisa against the US dollar. And Brent crude prices declined more than 2.5% to trade near $125 per barrel.
घरेलू शेयर बाजारों में 2% से अधिक की तेजी। सेंसेक्स 54,600 से ऊपर और निफ्टी 16,350 के स्तर के आसपास हुए बंद। डॉलर के मुकाबले रुपया हुआ 35 पैसे मजबूत और ब्रेंट कच्चे तेल की कीमतें $125 प्रति बैरल के आसपास। कार्यक्रम में सबसे पहले बात घरेलू शेयर बाजारों की। आज 2% से अधिक का उछाल दर्ज हुआ है घरेलू शेयर बाजारों में। वैश्विक शेयर बाजारों से मिले जुले संकेतों के बीच आज दोनों सूचकांकों में ये तेजी देखी गई। सेंसेक्स 54,600 से ऊपर और निफ्टी 16,350 के नजदीक पहुंचकर बंद हुए। बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का सेंसेक्स 1,223 अंक की तेजी से 2.29% बढ़कर 54,647 पर बंद हुआ। नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का निफ्टी भी 332 अंक की वृद्धि से 2.07% की बढ़त लेकर 16,345 पर जा पहुंचा। विस्तृत बाजार की बात करें तो बीएसई मिड कैप इंडेक्स में 2.37% और स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स में 2.16% की बढ़त दर्ज हुई।
The Sensex and the Nifty today surged more than 2%. Both stocks jumped amid mixed cues from the global share markets. The BSE Sensex finished above 54,600 points, while the NSE Nifty ended near 16,350 level. The Sensex rose 1,223 points or 2.29% to trade at 54,647. The Nifty gained 332 points or 2.07% to trade at 16,345. In the broader market at the BSE, the mid-cap climbed 2.37% and the small-cap index surged 2.16%. In the Sensex pack, 25 companies logged gains while 5 witnessed losses. Asian Paints was the top gainer as it rose 5.6%, followed by Reliance, which added 5.2%. Bajaj Finance gained 5.1% and Mahindra & Mahindra climbed 4.9%. On the other hand, Power Grid slipped 1.9%, NTPC declined 1.6%. In sectoral indices at BSE, 16 indices gained while 3 sectors fell. Energy gained the most as it rose 3.6%, Realty gained 3.2% and Auto Index appreciated 2.9%. Consumer discretionary goods and services surged 2.7%. On the other hand, metal fell 0.7%. The overall breadth of the BSE trade was positive as shares of 2,625 companies gained while 722 fell. Shares of 88 companies remained unchanged. Jayanto, all in all, good news coming from the markets. Yesterday we saw a rise of 1%. Today it's 2.5%. So overall 3.5% in 2 days when we compare the last 4 sessions, or even from February 23rd when it, from then till now it's fallen 6%.
Yeah.
So what are the factors do you think that are driving the market?
Well, I guess at this point of time, while the choppiness and the swinging of the market is happening intra-week and in some cases intra-fortnight, at this point of time, as we speak of today, the war in Ukraine has gone in, I think 10th or 11th day today.
It's the 14th.
Yeah, 14th. Sorry.
Yeah.
So it's almost 2 weeks now. The other important part is what we have figured out as the Ukrainian president has, said that Ukrainian president has said that joining NATO is, not immediate agenda of the Ukrainian government per se. So that should let off some steam, I guess. Having said so, what should also be understood over here is that markets obviously look forward for some, if not understanding, at least some signals in terms of an understanding happening in the war over there, so that they can have a glimpse of when and how the war is going to ebb down from here. So I guess in terms of optics, I guess that works quite well for the market, and as a result of which we have seen that the Asian markets also have been responding positively, and we saw our domestic markets. But I would also like to put in a footnote over here while we are analyzing how the markets have been doing well. The footnote remains that the fact that in extreme choppiness, there are always good bargain hunters who always come in a stealth mode.
Yeah.
So, and when that happens, so we see these upward swings, intra-week swings. But then if you ask me very frankly, is it a time to take a call on how the markets would go up from here? My guess is as good as yours at this point of time, or anybody's for that sake. Because hourly the situation is changing, and, we still don't know to what way or to what form this particular Ukraine-Russia, war would take shape. Specifically given the fact that the European nations who were involved in a wait-and-watch policy now have, at least some of the nations like Poland and all, now have come in and start off, chipping in with their arms and ammunitions. The manpower has not happened. If they start chipping in with manpower, then it's obviously a full brain war which is going beyond, just a Ukraine-Russia thing.
You mentioned of course, the world scenario, but are there any domestic, reasons as well for the markets performing the way they are? Some analysts, we have an LIC today. SEBI has given the green light to the LIC IPO. Apart from that, do you think there are any domestic reasons as well for the markets?
What I must say is, at this point of time, our domestic markets, to a great extent, is being, fine-tuned of how international markets and international scenarios are taking up. What I would rather say is the challenges which the domestic market right now would face are two-pronged. One is inflation, which has been accepted, and the government is trying to figure out what to do about it. The other part is obviously the runaway oil prices, which is happening. Now, I don't believe it's going to stay long in terms of $120, $130 level. But then one still also doesn't know how fast the fall will be. So if not, even if the rise is stumped at this point of time, one doesn't know whether oil prices would come back to, $70, $75, $80 pretty soon. So those are facts, I guess, which, are a dark cloud on the Indian scenario, economic scenario. And also we should understand is, given, such a perception in terms of how globally markets, how global economies have, come out of COVID at this point of time, which includes India, with a fantastic vaccination drive, to a great extent, they have achieved a lot of things and a lot of milestones which we were not at that point of time, maybe 1.5 years ago, were not even aware that we'll be achieving those. So the foundation post-COVID era, if you take away the January Omicron era, which obviously,
yes,
was in a lighter phase, but also it stopped working in a lot of places, cities faced lockdown and all. So if you just, negate that to some extent, I believe the economy at this point of time is far more resilient in terms of, taking up from here. But then, as I said, geopolitical issues, one doesn't know where it takes you, where it lands you. And I can, share with you numerous examples where,
you mentioned the fact
things
that
between India, things between, say, what the US is doing to Russia, it can have a huge impact globally in terms of commodities,
yes,
globally in terms of how businesses, how trade, and a lot of people don't know, say for example. So those are the things. But one good pointer today is, you mentioned the LIC thing. The other part I believe is at this point of time, the opening up of international air travel,
yes,
is also an important booster to how things are happening. Although I would take it with a pinch of salt because given that Russian airspace is going to be closed for almost most of the non-Asian, airliners. So that's an important fact because even if India opens up, we have to see how, we don't have to bypass, but how, for example, the US Airways, they have, stopped their flight between Delhi, New York and things like that.
Yes.
Japan is taking a very circumstantial route for their Tokyo, London, journey. So I mean, so all those factors are there. But in terms of domestic, if you ask me whether the domestic signals to trigger a happy market scenario, I would love to see those triggers. But then, as I said, it's
Let's
too much
wait
of
and
a
watch.
too much of impingement.
जनता आपने कहा कि हैप्पी मार्केट सिनेरियो है, और क्या आपको लगता है कि अभी के जो प्रेजेंट वैल्यूएशंस हैं वो रीजनेबल हैं? और अगर रीजनेबल हैं तो इन्वेस्टर को एक आम निवेशक को क्या निवेश के लिए अब जाना चाहिए, या फिर उसे थोड़ा सा और वेट करना चाहिए?
ये बहुत अच्छा सवाल किया विशाल आपने, क्योंकि 2-4 दिन पहले भी मैं एक स्टॉक सेशन में क्वेश्चन आंसर्स में यहाँ पे इस तरह का सवाल काफी सारे लोगों का आया था कि 60,000 के ऊपर जब स्टॉक मार्केट थे, सबको लगा बहुत मार्केट महंगा है, इस वक्त हमें वो रन डाउन नहीं करना चाहिए, अब मार्केट 54,000 के लेवल में है, क्या ये सही स्तर है कि नहीं? और हमेशा मेरा राय इसमें ये रहा कि कोई भी स्तर पे मैं मानता हूं कि निवेश करना या स्टॉक्स को बेच के बाहर आना सही होता है। सिर्फ आपको देखना है कि किस क्षेत्र में आप प्रवेश करना चाहते हैं, और आपको देखना है आपका इन्वेस्टमेंट एपेटाइट, आपका इन्वेस्टमेंट होराइजन क्या है। अब उदाहरण स्वरूप अगर मैं बात करूं, पीएसयू बैंक्स का जैसे आप बात करें, बहुत ही अच्छा दौर रहा पिछले 6-8 महीने के दौरान, और उसमें से काफी अभी पीएसयू स्टॉक्स 15-20-25% सस्ता है, लेकिन लोग सोचे कि शायद इसमें और गिरावट हो। लेकिन मैं मानता था अगर 63,000 लेवल्स में भी अगर आप 2-4 अच्छे पीएसयू स्टॉक्स में निवेश करके 3 साल का अवधि अगर आपका होता है तो आपको उसमें भी फैंटास्टिक रिटर्न्स होंगे। और स्टॉक मार्केट को सबसे बड़े जो अच्छे निवेशक जिनको माना जाता है कि चलिए इन्होंने 14-15% 15 साल का अवधि में मार्केट में स्टॉक को ओवरऑल जज करके उन्होंने कमा पाए, उनको अच्छा निवेश अगर आप मानते हैं तो रन अवे प्रॉफिट्स या रन अवे लॉसेस ये एक हिस्सा है स्टॉक मार्केट का। नहीं तो आप एफडी में पड़े रहिए, कोई चाहता नहीं एफडी में पड़े रहना, लेकिन साथ में हमें समझना है कि मार्केट को प्रेडिक्ट करके सही समय, चाहे कितना भी स्टॉक मार्केट पंडित साहब को बताए कि सही समय, गलत समय, इस वक्त, इस लेवल, वो सारे चीजें एक अंदाजा के हिसाब से चलते हैं। आपका सही समय जो आपके लिए सही है वो आपके लिए सही समय है, मैं मानता हूँ। स्टॉक मार्केट में, जीवन में भी शायद ऐसे ही होता है। तो स्टॉक मार्केट में भी अगर उस तरह का एक आप रूप लेके चले, साथ में आपका टेक्निकल सपोर्ट होना चाहिए इन टर्म्स ऑफ जिस स्टॉक में आप निवेश कर रहे हो उस कंपनी के बारे में जानकारी, हमेशा हम बोलते हैं इन्फॉर्मेशन लीजिए, जानकारी लीजिए क्या क्षेत्र में है ना। अब जैसे आज का तारीख में मैं मानता हूं ईवी जुड़े, इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स के जुड़े, जितना भी एंसिलरी इंडस्ट्रीज है, स्टार्टअप जितना सारे, बैटरी स्वैपिंग का बिजनेस जो लोग हैं, कोई बड़े कंपनी तो बैटरी स्वैपिंग का बिजनेस में आया नहीं, बहुत सारे स्टार्टअप्स आए हुए, ये सारे कंपनियां अगले 2-3 साल के अंदर मार्केट में आएंगे आईपीओ, तो वो सारे बहुत अच्छे हैं। उदाहरण से हम ये भी कहेंगे, हम आईपीओज आपने देखे, कुछ जो स्टार्टअप कंपनीज है जो पिछले 3-4 महीने का दौरान बहुत धमाकेदार आईपीओ में लिस्टिंग हुआ है, रातों रात शेयर्स डबल ट्रिपल हो गए, लेकिन जो क्रैश हुए हैं उसमें अब लोगों का सवाल ये है कि इस तरह का जो न्यू एज कंपनीज का जो आईपीओ लिस्टिंग वैल्यूएशन जो हुए है, चाहे हम ठग गए क्या इस वक्त स्तर पे। तो maybe for want of better words, I mean, to be actually fooled is something wrong, or cheated is also something wrong, but मेरा कहना का मतलब ये है कि कोई भी स्तर पे कोई भी कंपनी, अगर आपको उस सेक्टर में रुचि है और आपको लगता है कि हाँ इस सेक्टर में शायद फिलहाल जो वातावरण है उसमें हम प्रवेश कर सकते हैं, तो बहुत अच्छा रहेगा अगर आपको स्तर सही ढूंढ के मार्केट का सेंसेक्स या स्टॉक के हिसाब से आप ऊंचा चढ़ाव आपको करते रहेंगे, you will never be able to beat or predict the smartness of the stock.
We'll continue with this discussion, but let's go in for a little short break.
बड़े भैया इस कहावत को जरा एक्सप्लेन तो करिए कि पानी यूं मत डाले जाओ, ऋतु देख के फसल उगाओ।
सिंपल है छोटे, कि अपने लक्ष्य को दिमाग में रख कर इन्वेस्ट करना सीखो, पैसा ऐसे ही मत लगाते जाओ।
ओ तो ये बात है।
हाँ छोटे, अगर पढ़ाई के लिए या किसी की शादी के लिए जोड़ना है रुपया, तो उसी हिसाब से तो इन्वेस्ट करना पड़ेगा ना भैया।
बड़े भैया।
हाँ छोटे।
भारत के सबसे बड़े स्टॉक एक्सचेंज NSE द्वारा निवेशकों के हित में जारी।
Welcome back to the program Market Mantra. Jayanto, before going into the break, you were talking about the resilience of the Indian markets and the Indian economy. Now, the fact is that there is an RBI MPC next month. And also before that, by all accounts, the US Fed is in all probability going to raise the rates and at least 25 basis points, if not more. Do you think the RBI is also going to follow suit, or will the focus will still be on growth here?
Well, I guess at this point of time, the headroom for a RBI waiting or the MPC waiting to not to tinker with the interest rates are gradually becoming lesser and lesser. Okay. So, I mean, it's a convoluted way of saying yes, the chances of it happening pretty soon is more obvious than it getting delayed further from here. We also should understand that the elections are over. So there is also no political, sort of an environment whereby there would be, some sort of expectation that, they would be stalling it further because of some political milestone even happening, things like that. Although MPC is an independent committee, nothing to do with politics. But then overall people take a holistic view in terms of how the interest rate shape is panning up, what all events are happening. It's the same reason why we have not seen any, price increase in oil and diesel at this point of time. So that's maybe going to happen tomorrow. So I saw some news report today happening. We're saying on Sunday or Monday this price
We've been
and
hearing these
it's going to come in a
reports.
huge major jump. So unfortunately, while they should have been completely delinked, but that's how, governments, not only in India, everywhere people work. So, answering your question, obviously, whatever the Fed does or doesn't, I guess RBI's, rate hike is going to come sooner than later. Specifically given the high inflationary scenario we have at this point of time.
जी, और अब घरेलू मुद्रा के प्रदर्शन पर नजर डाल लेते हैं। अंतरबैंक विदेशी मुद्रा बाजार में आज रुपया 35 पैसे मजबूत होकर $1 की तुलना में 76 रुपए 57 पैसे के स्तर पर बंद हुआ। विश्व की 6 प्रमुख मुद्राओं की तुलना में डॉलर की मजबूती दर्शाने वाला डॉलर इंडेक्स 0.46% की गिरावट से 98.6 पर कारोबार कर रहा था। जयंता, आपसे यहां जानना चाहेंगे कि रुपये में 35 पैसे की मजबूती और ये हमारे अर्थव्यवस्था के लिहाज से या कहें कि एक्सपोर्ट और इंपोर्ट के लिहाज से कितनी मीनिंगफुल है?
नहीं, देखिए, इस वक्त जो रूपी डॉलर का जो एक्सचेंज रेट है खास करके उसमें थोड़ा बहुत प्रेशर रूपी पर बना हुआ है। एक तो वॉर का वजह, दूसरा जो कच्चे तेल का कीमतों की जो स्थिति है। और इसमें मैं मानता हूं कि जो इंडिकेटिव लेवल्स है बिटवीन 74 to 75 अगर रुपया के होल्ड करता है तो हम लोग के लिए काफी मोर और लेस इस वक्त जो फिस्कल सिचुएशन है काफी अच्छा रहेंगे। और इसमें जरूर ये है बात कि जो रनअवे वीकनेस हुआ है रुपी में, बिकॉज डॉलर अचानक स्ट्रेंथ हो गया पिछले 3 हफ्ते के अंदर, तो उसमें थोड़ा बहुत शायद और गिरावट डॉलर में हम देख सकते हैं। यानी कि रुपी का स्ट्रेंथ थोड़ा हम अगले 1 हफ्ते का दौरान आप देखें और स्थिति ऐसे बने रहे और बिगड़ते ना रहे तो करीबन 50-60 पैसे और रुपी महंगा हो सकता है, सस्ता हो सकता है। सर,
यहाँ एक छोटा सा ब्रेक, लौटते हैं ब्रेक के बाद।
उपभोक्ताओं तक पहुंचने का सुलभ और सस्ता माध्यम है आकाशवाणी।
आकाशवाणी के विभिन्न केंद्रों से कीजिए अपने उत्पादों और सेवाओं का प्रचार विज्ञापनों के माध्यम से।
लोकल और राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर कीजिए अपने बिजनेस का विस्तार, क्योंकि आकाशवाणी में विज्ञापन बुकिंग हुई बहुत ही आसान।
अब घर, दफ्तर या दुकान पर बैठे बैठे आप कर सकते हैं विज्ञापनों की बुकिंग।
डायल कीजिए 870-001-4242।
नंबर एक बार फिर नोट करें, 870-001-4242।
कार्यक्रम में एक बार फिर आपका स्वागत है। रुक करते हैं एशियाई बाजारों का। सिंगापुर के स्ट्रेट्स टाइम्स को छोड़कर आज एशियाई बाजारों में गिरावट रही। अमेरिकी शेयर बाजारों में गिरावट के बाद एशियाई बाजारों का प्रदर्शन कमजोर रहा। सिंगापुर के स्ट्रेट्स टाइम्स इंडेक्स में 1.6% का उछाल आया, लेकिन चीन का शंघाई कंपोजिट इंडेक्स 1.1% लुढ़क गया। हांगकांग का हैंगसेंग 0.7% और जापान का निकेई 0.3% के नुकसान में रहे। दक्षिण कोरिया के कोस्पी में आज कारोबार नहीं हुआ। बात यूरोपीय बाजारों की करें तो अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार में यूरोपीय शेयर बाजारों में तेजी का रुख था। लंदन का FTSE 100 1.4% ऊपर चल रहा था। फ्रांस का कैक 4.2% और जर्मनी का डेक्स 4.5% की बढ़त के साथ कारोबार कर रहे थे।
Moving on to the US market, the 3 main US stocks ended lower yesterday as the United States banned Russian oil and other energy imports amid Russia-Ukraine conflict. US President Joe Biden yesterday imposed an immediate ban on the imports, while Britain will phase out imports of Russian oil and oil products by the end of 2022 and consider banning its natural gas. In a volatile session, the Dow Jones Industrial Average Index lost 0.6%, the S&P 500 plunged 0.7% and the Nasdaq Composite fell 0.3%. Jayanto, given the fact that from last week, Indians can invest in the US stocks now listed on the NYSE or even Nasdaq through NSE IFSC, and given the trend that we're seeing in the US markets right now, the bear market, so to speak, do you think it's a good time for the Indian investors to invest more into the US markets?
Yeah, I guess there has been a strong appetite for Indians to have access to US markets and how stocks behave. and it's a welcome move to have that opportunity over here. And who would like to invest, stocks like Google and Apple and all those things around, even Boeing for that case, or even the IT sector, NASDAQ and things like that. So obviously, it's if not a boon, but at least an opportunity to try out, international markets. And I think we completely welcome that move. In terms of the softness of the US markets at this point of time, I guess opportunities exist in every single market world over, which has some, maturity in terms of age and in terms of, how the markets have been operating. So, and people who have an international flavor in terms of understanding and all, they already have some presence in some form or the other, to France or whatever. But this direct investment will obviously, augur well for these investors.
And why are we seeing this, dichotomy? Because we saw that just as, Vishal read just now, the European markets are doing fairly well, but the US markets are still down. Do you think it's also to do with the US announcement of ban on the Russian oil imports?
See, there is obviously a very strong inflation scenario growing up in the US. Now, despite the ban, Biden has in all strong words, quote unquote, has said that this is a Putin tax on the oil. So you can't just, bypass it. So that's a direct way of accepting the fact that prices are going to go up further from here. Now oil is over $4 a barrel, and I remember such prices were spiked way back during the Gulf War times, where prices were shot up at these levels. So taking a cue from there, although there is not a huge Russian dependence on oil prices. And in fact, I have a different story when specifically the media was screaming yesterday, how Russia can be, cornered, or how the world is going to face a higher price because Russian oil is going to get off from the market. I believe that how the oil producers behave in an almost maniacal cohorting way. What would typically happen is when oil prices shoot up very fast, the production shoots up at a double rate. And then all of a sudden a time comes, which can happen in weeks also, where they realize that there is an excess of supply in the markets and the oil futures crash. So the chances of that happening are much more prevalent now. We saw a small trigger of that happening today when the oil prices fell than what they were. Although Goldman Sachs says that it's more because of people discounted this particular fact. But I do believe there is something else which works in the market beyond just discounting, because oil producers, to take benefit of this $130 of prices, would all like to produce more and would like to catch up the markets. But then when supply overnight, in this case 5 to 6 days, becomes abundant, the oil price would crash. And not only that, what can also happen is if there is all of a sudden a signal of the Ukraine-Russian war ebbing down, or a solution coming in, the oil prices will fall further. Exactly. Because these are supernormal prices and it can't exist at these prices. In addition to that, that would also lead to a disruption in how oil prices behave. So that's the issue, I guess, which the US has to face up and stand up to.
We were talking about oil prices, so let's have a look at what the oil prices are today. The oil prices today declined around 3%, even as the United States banned Russian oil imports. Goldman Sachs analysts said that the factor of the ban on Russian oil had already been priced in a day before. That is the reason crude prices did not rise further. Global crude oil prices today hit $130 per barrel level in intraday trade, as Western sanctions have cut Russia off from global trade and financial markets in response to its military operation in Ukraine. Brent crude was trading around $124.40 per barrel in a highly volatile market. WTI prices were at $119.70 per barrel. Jayanta, you yourself just now said that, the prices have come down, and yesterday also we saw 2.5%. But do you think this is are we seeing in the stock markets this volatility is likely to continue, obviously, till the time this whole conflict goes on?
Well, the oil volatility, I think, is proportionately 5 times more than what the stock market volatility will be, because there are lesser number of players who are producing oil and the whole world is buying it. So obviously the chances of volatility are much more higher.
We'll continue with this discussion, but after a short break.
बड़े भैया इस दोहे को जरा एक्सप्लेन तो करिए कि बिना विचारे जो करे सो पाछे पछताए काम बिगाड़े आपनो जग में हो फसाए
सिंपल है छोटे कि बिना विचार किए अगर आप इन्वेस्टमेंट करेंगे तो बाद में पछताएंगे और लोग हंसेंगे।
वो तो ये बात है।
हाँ छोटे, लोगों की बातों में मत पड़िए, इन्वेस्टमेंट सोच समझ कर आज से ही करिए।
बड़े भैया
अरे छोटे,
भारत के सबसे बड़े स्टॉक एक्सचेंज NSE द्वारा निवेशकों के हित में जारी।
सोच कर समझ कर इन्वेस्ट कर।
Welcome back to Market Mantra. We were discussing about the oil prices. Jayanta, US has of course banned the oil imports. UK has said that it will also, cut down on the exports by the end of this year. But European countries who are very majorly dependent on Russia for their energy needs, they haven't revealed their, cards, so to speak. Do you think, given the fact that they're still holding, they're still not coming out with how they behave, that is also had impact on the oil prices.
Well, I guess that's one of the worst kept secrets in this Russia-Ukraine war, if you were watching very closely, whereby everyone was gung-ho and overboard in terms of announcing sanctions, including, the whole Western Union critical countries who were speaking of part of NATO, not part of NATO, Scandinavian countries and all. But no one had a word on oil because, one should hit where it hurts. So, and obviously, the European nations didn't want to hit it that way because their whole system would get hurt. And typically, the other part was with Germany coming in over here, where Germany is also to a great extent dependent on natural gas and all from Russia. So overnight, they wouldn't like to see, their stoves or their pipelines or their businesses and industries all of a sudden dying down because of the announcement which they did. Let me also tell you, since we are discussing oil, and the important part is this closure of all Russian aircrafts to international airspace, specifically Europe and America and all, would also hurt the aviation sector really, really bad. Because what has happened is all the Airbus aircrafts which are there with them, they are not going to pay the lease for this month. And I think which is already announced. They are not going to pay because the aircrafts are unable to fly. Number two, they are unable to transfer money through the SWIFT account because SWIFT has been banned.
Yes.
Now, if the lease money doesn't come in, and we are speaking of around 540 aircrafts of the 3 or 4 major commercial airlines of Russia which are banned, if the lease money doesn't come in, who suffers the most? It's Airbus which suffers the most. And who who gains out of it is maybe, if these aircrafts are on ground for the next 6 months or 8 months, then obviously Boeing would come in a major way in terms of selling more and fresher new aircrafts. So there is a huge long story than just the Ukraine-India-Russia war, which is happening.
जी, और ये कच्चे तेल की जो बढ़ती कीमतें हैं और आपने कहा भी कि इन्फ्लेशन का खतरा बना हुआ है और इन्फ्लेशन महंगाई बढ़ेगी। घरेलू मोर्चे पर अगर हम इसकी बात करें तो हमारी अर्थव्यवस्था इससे किस तरह आपको प्रभावित होती दिख रही है आने वाले कुछ महीनों? देखिए, इसमें तो कोई दो राय नहीं है कि अगर घरेलू स्थिति में अब जैसे बढ़ोतरी का बात किया जा रहा है, करीबन पेट्रोल में बोल रहा है 10, 12, 15 रुपया का बढ़ोतरी रातों रात हो सकता है। ट्रैवल महंगा होगा, लगेज वगैरह सामान इधर से उधर देश में कहीं न कहीं भेजना हो, सब कुछ महंगा हो जाएंगे। तो इसलिए मैंने कहा कि भाई आरबीआई का इस वक्त हेडरूम ऑफ नॉट डूइंग एनी चेंजेस अभी ऑलमोस्ट खत्म है और उसमें ब्याज दर का हमें फर्क थोड़ा पड़ना चाहिए या आएगा शायद अनाउंसमेंट के तौर से, अगर इस इन्फ्लेशन को काबू करना हो तो। जी, और अब बात करते हैं गोल्ड की। मल्टी कमोडिटी एक्सचेंज पर अप्रैल अनुबंध के लिए सोना 500 रुपए सस्ता होकर 53,725 रुपए प्रति 10 ग्राम पर कारोबार कर रहा था। हालांकि मार्च अनुबंध वाली चांदी 255 रुपए मजबूत होकर 71,640 रुपए प्रति किलोग्राम पर चल रही थी। न्यूयॉर्क मर्केंटाइल एक्सचेंज पर सोना मंदी के साथ $2,022.30 प्रति औंस, जबकि चांदी $26.70 प्रति औंस पर कारोबार कर रहे थे।
Jayanto, very, very short comment on the way the gold prices are.
Gold has done fabulously well. I mean, given this particular, scenario which is shaping up globally, gold has really done well. And obviously that's what typically happens. Metals market do well.
Jayanto, thank you so much for joining us in the program and giving your opinion. And before we close, a reminder of the headlines. Domestic stocks recover more than 2%. Sensex closes above 54,600. Nifty settles near 16,350. Rupee appreciates 35 paisa against the US dollar. And Brent crude prices declined more than 2.5% to trade near $125 per barrel. And that's it from us today in Market Mantra. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. with Money Matters. Till then, this is Anubha and Vishal saying bye-bye. Namaskar.
इस कहावत को जरा एक्सप्लेन तो करिए कि नाच ना जाने आंगन टेढ़ा।
सिंपल है छोटे, इन्वेस्टमेंट डांस की तरह है। अगर ध्यान से सोच समझ कर करोगे तो मस्त रहोगे, और अगर लापरवाही की बाजू वाले से भिड़ोगे।
ओ, तो ये बात है।
हाँ छोटे, इन्वेस्ट करने से पहले पूरी जानकारी जुटाइए और बाजू वाले की नहीं, अपनी अकल लगाइए।
बड़े भैया।
अरे छोटे,
भारत के सबसे बड़े स्टॉक एक्सचेंज NSE द्वारा निवेशकों के हित में जारी।
सोच कर, समझ कर, इन्वेस्ट कर।
Market Mantra brought to you by
National Stock Exchange.
Market Mantra, Market Mantra, Market Mantra, Market Mantra, Market Mantra, Market Mantra.